Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm actually going to be talking about an older film from the 90s that was actually directed by Doug Liman of the Bourne Identity fame, and he later went on to direct The Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. This is a film that came out in the 90s that had a very young Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn. What's weird about the film Swingers, which is the film I'm reviewing for you today, is it's one of those films where I've kind of always been meaning to watch it, but for some reason either I couldn't track it down, or it wasn't at Redbox, or it wasn't on Netflix, or it wasn't on any of those for the longest time. And then obviously with me having an HBO Max subscription earlier this year, or late last year I should say, with Wonder Woman 84 being like a Christmas Day release, I was looking through the titles, kind of searching for something to watch, and once you know, Swingers was one of the titles. So I finally got around to seeing Swingers, and I'm going to let you know what I thought of it today. So, in this movie, you guys, basically, Jon Favreau plays this guy who's kind of this up and coming actor and stand up comedian. And, he finds jobs every once in a while, but he's not like super well known yet, so he kind of has to work his way around Los Angeles to kind of find things that'll make him more famous and make him more well known with people and stuff. Um, but he went through a bad breakup, and basically he's having a hard time getting over it. He's constantly thinking about this girl that he was been dating for like 6 years, and he can't get over it. So basically, Vince Vaughn's character, who's basically his best friend in this movie, takes him out to Vegas, and they basically have this really crazy night. Um, Jon Favreau's character gets to meet another girl. Vince Vaughn's character gets to meet another girl. And Vince Vaughn's kind of in a position in this movie where he's single, but he's not like desperately looking for someone to enter his life. It's one of those things where maybe he'll go on a date with somebody for maybe one or two dates, not feeling anything. He has no problem dumping them. Um, while Jon Favreau is kind of in an opposite position, he kind of needs somebody to kind of fill that spot that his ex-girlfriend is now gone from and things like that. And so he wants to be able to maintain something serious with somebody. And so throughout the course of this movie, and obviously these small trips to Vegas that keep happening for Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau, basically they're trying to kind of fix that void in Jon Favreau's life where he doesn't have a woman in his life anymore, and they're trying to fix that and maintain that and help him get over kind of this rough time he's going through as far as getting over this breakup he had with this girl at one point. But overall, guys, I enjoyed Swingers. It's a fun little movie. There's things in it that are really admirable and likable. It's always kind of cool to see, two people that you've always watched your entire life in films kind of see something that they did in their earlier years. This is clearly a very young Jon Favreau. This is clearly a very young Vince Vaughn. And I don't know how far along Doug Liman's directing career was at this point. I do want to say I think this is before the Bourne Identity, so this was kind of right before he started to get famous with stuff too. And so it's a fun little movie. It was clearly meant to be a small scale movie. This is clearly not a big budget film at all, but they definitely went to Vegas. They clearly went to places in Los Angeles and things like that to really kind of spice up the movie quite a bit. And they really do a lot with kind of location and the surroundings that these characters are in and things like that. So I really enjoyed Swingers. There is some things about it that I think could have been better, but like I said, it is always fun to see kind of an early career move for Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn and Doug Liman. So that part of the film was always really fun for me to watch, is kind of seeing what they did in an early part of their careers. For my positives and negatives of Swingers, for my positives, I thought this film was overall really fun to watch. I never was really bored necessarily. There is something I'll bring up in my negatives that's kind of interferes with this compliment a little bit, but for the most part, it is fun to watch. It is kind of cool to see them go to Vegas and kind of place down all this money on something that really isn't a guarantee that they'll win anything. It is fun to see these two actors and two characters go around and kind of see what works for them and what doesn't with these women that they're meeting in Vegas and things like that, and even in Los Angeles and certain other scenes. But it's a fun movie to watch. So Doug Liman, as far as making an entertaining, fun film goes, he succeeded in that area for sure. I also thought this film very successfully depicted how breakups play out for people. I haven't gone through a ton of breakups. I'm one of those people where I've dated a lot of people throughout the years, but I never really was. I was either the person that got the phone call saying, "Hey, let's not do this anymore," or I was the person that I was making the phone call, be like, "Hey, let's not do this anymore." But from the things where I've been, dumped, or clearly that person didn't want to go out with me anymore, I certainly know where Jon Favreau came from as far as how breakups kind of eat you alive sometimes, and how it really kind of ruins your life until you kind of move on to the next step and find another person and things like that, and kind of where you're comfortable with where you are. So the film does successfully depict how breakups kind of eat people alive in these situations, and how they play out, and how it's kind of really hard to move on from something when someone so serious and important in your life doesn't want to see you anymore. Another positive with this movie was there's a lot of things, because I've seen a lot of like behind the scenes of Swingers. Like I saw the CNN's The Movie special where they actually covered Swingers in one area of that movie, in one area of the special. And Jon Favreau was talking about how Swingers kind of started as a script where it was just kind of little notes of things that amused him in life, and kind of how he could incorporate that into a movie that would be fun and, small scale and things like that. And so you definitely get that funness that came from those notes that he kept while making the script for Swingers, because he also wrote and produced this movie too, of these fun day-to-day concepts, things that you shouldn't do in your life, things that you should do, things where you might look back on your life and be like, man, why did I not do that at that one point in time? I guess one scene that really made me maybe remember of something not to do when you're starting to see somebody is there's a scene where he's trying to leave a voicemail for somebody that he really wants to get serious with and have another date with. And so he makes the mistake of leaving multiple voicemail messages, and each one is kind of contradicting itself, or it's doing something where he's trying to leave information that was supposed to be in that last message, but because the message caught him off, he had to feel the need to leave another voicemail. Something you should never do, by the way. Just leave one voicemail, and kind of like what Vince Vaughn and the friends were saying, maybe give it a day or two to kind of mellow over and see if that's somebody you really want to go out with and things like that. So there's scenes like that in here that I thought were really effective and really were very true to kind of what they were trying to say. So there's fun little concepts like that. There's even a fun concept where Jon Favreau, I think his aunt had a role in this movie, where she basically was winning all these things at a crap table in Vegas. And here Jon Favreau is at like $100 table per person kind of thing. He loses all $300 of his money in that one round, doesn't get a thing. And here is a character played by one of his relatives that's winning everything at this dollar table and just kind of really eating it up and landing dates and all this other stuff that's just really, really funny. So there's fun concepts like that are played around in Swingers that are really enjoyable to watch. Also, Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn have very enjoyable screen chemistry here. This is no surprise. They're both very talented actors. So to see the two of them kind of play off of each other in a very fun, cool, funny way was very refreshing to me. So it was cool to see great screen chemistry between Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau in this movie. For my negatives of Swingers, though, the second half of this movie, unfortunately, is very, very slow. It's not a very fast-moving movie. I would say the first half really kind of found its ground pretty well, but the second half, unfortunately, is pretty slow. It really does kind of take its time with its final thoughts of where they're going with the movie and things like that. So kind of a slow second half, so kind of be patient with it when you get to that second half of the movie. Another thing I thought they could have played around with some more is Jon Favreau's character, because he's kind of not officially made it in Los Angeles yet. There's some really small moments where like his family's trying to catch up with him and things like that. One aspect of his character I thought they could have maybe improved a little bit was his family back home and kind of how they view the whole thing. It's quite clear from the voicemail messages that they leave him that they really didn't have a lot of excuse me. They didn't really have a lot of faith in him going to Los Angeles and pursuing this thing of this acting / stand-up comedian career. So I'd be kind of more interested in seeing kind of why his family didn't really believe in that and things like that. So they really the only kind of development they do in this movie is small little voicemail calls from the family. And I thought that aspect could have been handled better, because I really would have liked to have known more of what they thought about him being there and maybe not finding work all the time and things like that. So I thought that aspect of the film could have been improved. I really would have liked to see more of what his family was thinking of him pursuing this really kind of this hit or miss kind of career of either you make it or you don't. And overall, Swingers, for the most part, is a pretty predictable story. I wasn't expecting The Sixth Sense or anything, but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen something that maybe could have threw me off a little bit, maybe brought up a message that I really wasn't expecting them to pursue and things like that. For the most part, though, this is a pretty predictable story. You will kind of see after, I would say about halfway in, where the story's probably going to go, more than likely. There's also some hit or miss jokes here where either the joke really, really hits and it's really, really funny, and there's some jokes here where it really doesn't hit and it really doesn't really get what it's trying to do done very well. But for the most part, I'm going to give Swingers an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good film. It's an enjoyable film. If you have HBO Max like I do, not a terrible film to track down and watch on that. A fun little film that I'm finally glad I was able to finally get around to seeing. And it's always fun to see kind of what Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn were doing in the early part of their careers for movies. So 8 out of 10 for me, a moderate recommendation for me. Swingers is a good film that has a couple of problems every once in a while, but it's still an enjoyable time that I give a moderate recommendation to. 8 out of 10 for me for Swingers.